Elijah Donovan slouched in his seat aboard the interstellar cruiser Nebula Dream, his lanky frame barely contained by the ergonomic chair. He fiddled with the datapad in his hands, desperately searching for an opening line that didn't sound like it came from one of his failed novels. The woman seated next to him, tall, willowy, with hair the color of starlight, had been engrossed in her holonovel for the past 3 hours. Elijah had spent those same 3 hours trying to work up the courage to speak to her. "So," he finally managed, his voice cracking. He cleared his throat and tried again. "So, what brings you to the Andromeda sector?" The woman's luminescent eyes flickered towards him, then back to her book. "Work," she said curtly. Elijah nodded as if this single-word answer was the most fascinating thing he'd ever heard. Right. Work. That's good. I'm here for, A sharp ping from his communication implant cut him off. Elijah winced, tapping his temple to accept the incoming message. "Mr. Donovan?" A holographic face materialized in his field of vision, a green-skinned being with 4 eyes and a mouthful of needle-like teeth. "I'm Grax Thor, executor of the late Zachary Quint's estate. I'm contacting you regarding your inheritance." Elijah blinked, momentarily forgetting about his attempted flirtation. "Zach? He's dead?" The alien nodded solemnly. "I'm afraid so, sir. Mr. Quint passed away 3 standard days ago. In his will, he left you his entire estate on Azuria. I'm transmitting the coordinates now. Please report to my office upon your arrival for the full details of your inheritance." The message ended abruptly, leaving Elijah staring into space. Zach was dead? They hadn't spoken in years, but still. And he'd left Elijah an inheritance? On Azuria, of all places? "Bad news?" the woman next to him asked, a hint of concern in her voice. Elijah turned to her, his mind reeling. "My friend died, and apparently left me something on Azuria." She raised an eyebrow. "Azuria? That's quite a place to inherit something. I hear the beaches are lovely, though the local customs can be a bit unusual." "Unusual how?" Elijah asked. But at that moment, the ship's AI announced their impending arrival at the Andromedan spaceport. The woman stood, gathering her belongings. "Good luck with your inheritance," she said with a small smile. "And a word of advice? On Azuria, always read the fine print." Before Elijah could ask what she meant, she was gone, lost in the crowd of disembarking passengers. The spaceport on Azuria was a riot of color and sound. Beings of every conceivable shape and size bustled about, their voices a cacophony of languages that Elijah's universal translator struggled to keep up with. He clutched his meager luggage close, feeling overwhelmed and out of place. A hovering droid approached him, its optics scanning his face. "Elijah Donovan," it inquired in a tinny voice. At Elijah's nod, it continued, "Please follow me. I will escort you to the estate of the late Zachary Quint." As they made their way through the crowded streets, Elijah couldn't help but gawk at the alien architecture. Buildings spiraled impossibly high, defying gravity. Holographic advertisements flickered in mid-air, hawking products he couldn't even begin to comprehend. "So," Elijah ventured, addressing the droid, "what exactly did Zach leave me? A house? Money?" The droid's head swiveled 180 degrees to face him, its expressionless face somehow managing to convey disapproval. "I am not authorized to disclose that information. Mr. Grax Thor will provide all necessary details." They traveled to the outskirts of the city, where the gleaming towers gave way to more modest dwellings. Finally, the droid came to a stop in front of a small, dilapidated structure that looked like it had seen better days, possibly centuries ago. "We have arrived," the droid announced. Elijah stared at the ramshackle building. This is what Zack left me?" Before the droid could respond, the door burst open. A vision in blue emerged. A woman with skin the color of a clear summer sky, hair like spun silver, and eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. She was also, Elijah couldn't help but notice, incredibly beautiful. "Husband!" she cried, rushing towards him with open arms. Elijah barely had time to sputter, "What?" before he found himself enveloped in an enthusiastic embrace. The woman's skin was cool to the touch, and she smelled faintly of ozone and exotic flowers. "Oh, how I've longed for your arrival," she exclaimed, pulling back to gaze at him adoringly. "I am Lumera, your devoted wife. Zack spoke so highly of you. I know we will be very happy together." Elijah's brain, which had been struggling to keep up with events since his arrival on Azuria, finally gave up and shut down completely. He stood there, mouth agape, as Lumera continued to beam at him. I think there's been a mistake," he finally managed to stammer. Lumera's smile faltered slightly. "A mistake? But Zack's will was quite clear. You are to inherit his estate, which includes me, of course. It's our way, you see. When a husband passes, his wife becomes the responsibility of the one named in the will." She tilted her head, studying him. "Did Zack not explain this to you?" "No," Elijah said weakly. "No, he most certainly did not." At that moment, a portly green-skinned alien waddled up the path, wheezing slightly. "Ah, Mr. Donovan," he exclaimed between breaths. "I see you've met the lovely Lumera. I'm Graxthor, we spoke earlier. Perhaps we should step inside to discuss the details of your inheritance." Elijah nodded numbly, allowing himself to be led into the house. The interior was just as shabby as the exterior, with mismatched furniture and peeling wallpaper. Graxthor settled himself into a creaking chair while Lumera guided Elijah to a worn sofa. "Now then," Graxthor began, pulling out a stack of documents. "As per the last will and testament of Zachary Quint, you, Elijah Donovan, are hereby bequeathed his entire estate on Azuria. This includes this property, all its contents, and, as is customary, the hand of his widow in marriage." Elijah's head was spinning. But I can't just marry someone I've never met. And what about Lumera? Doesn't she get a say in this?" Lumera patted his hand reassuringly. "Oh, my dear husband, of course I have a say, and I say yes. It's a great honor to be chosen. Zack must have thought very highly of you." "But we don't know each other," Elijah protested. "That's what the bonding ritual is for," Lumera explained cheerfully. "It will join our minds and souls, allowing us to truly know each other. It's quite passionate, really. We can perform it right away if you'd like." Elijah felt the blood drain from his face. I think I need some air." He stumbled to his feet and out the front door, gulping in the alien atmosphere. This couldn't be happening. It had to be some kind of elaborate prank. Any moment now, Zack would jump out from behind a bush, laughing at the expression on Elijah's face. But Zack didn't appear. Instead, a group of young women in impossibly short skirts came sauntering up the path. They were a rainbow of alien hues, green, purple, orange, and they all had their eyes fixed on Elijah. "Welcome home, Master," they chorused in unison, their voices sultry. Elijah backed away, bumping into the doorframe. Who are you?" "We're your servants, of course," a purple-skinned girl giggled. "Here to attend to your every need." She sidled up to him, pressing herself against his side. Elijah yelped, jumping away and nearly tripping over his own feet. I can't," he sputtered. Lumera appeared in the doorway, her expression concerned. "Is everything all right, husband?" "Ah, I see you've met the house staff. They came with the property, quite skilled from what Zach told me." Elijah's head was spinning. This was too much, way too much. He needed to think, to process, to figure out what the hell was going on. He backed away from the group of eager house staff and Lumera's concerned gaze. I need a moment," he managed to say before darting back into the house. He found himself in what appeared to be a study filled with strange artifacts and blinking consoles. Elijah leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. His hand brushed against something, and suddenly, with a soft whir, a hidden panel slid open. Elijah stumbled backward, staring at the revealed compartment. Inside was a tangle of wires and blinking lights, surrounding what looked like a small, pulsing orb of energy. And there, wedged between two circuit boards, was a handwritten note. With shaking hands, Elijah pulled out the note and unfolded it. He recognized Zach's messy scrawl immediately. "Elijah, if you're reading this, I'm dead, and you've stumbled into something bigger than either of us could have imagined. Trust no one. The fate of the galaxy may rest in your hands. P.S. Sorry about the wife thing. It was necessary for the cover. You'll thank me later. Maybe." Elijah stared at the note, then at the pulsing orb of energy. "Oh, Zach," he murmured, "what the hell have you gotten me into?" As if in response, the orb pulsed brighter, and for a moment, Elijah could have sworn he heard Zach's laughter echoing in the room. Elijah's mind raced as he stared at the pulsing orb and Zach's cryptic note. The fate of the galaxy? Trust no one? What had his old friend been involved in? A knock at the study door made him jump. He hastily shoved the note into his pocket and slammed the hidden panel shut. "Husband," Lumera's melodic voice called. "Is everything all right?" Elijah took a deep breath, trying to compose himself. "Yes," he called back, wincing at the tremor in his voice. Just getting acquainted with Zach's old office." He opened the door to find Lumera standing there, concern etched on her beautiful blue features. Behind her, he could see the house staff hovering in the hallway, their eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him deeply uncomfortable. "You seem distressed," Lumera observed, reaching out to touch his cheek. Her fingers were cool against his skin. "Perhaps we should proceed with the bonding ritual. It will ease your mind and help you adjust to your new life here." Elijah backed away, bumping into Zach's cluttered desk. "Look, Lumera, I appreciate the offer, but this is all happening very fast. I just found out my friend died, and now I'm supposed to inherit his house, his wife, and a bunch of, enthusiastic staff. I need time to process this." Lumera's brow furrowed. "But the bonding ritual is essential. Without it, our union isn't officially recognized. There could be complications." "Complications?" Elijah echoed, a sinking feeling in his stomach. One of the staff members, a green-skinned woman with eyes like liquid gold, stepped forward. "If the union isn't formalized within 48 hours of the heir's arrival, the entire estate reverts to the Azurian government," she explained, her voice far more businesslike than her appearance suggested. Elijah's head was spinning again. "So if I don't go through with this ritual with someone I just met, I lose everything Zach left me, including this house and all its contents?" His hand unconsciously moved to his pocket where Zach's note felt like it was burning a hole. Lumera nodded solemnly. "I'm afraid so. It's our way, you see. The ritual ensures that the new union is strong, that the widow is cared for, and that the estate remains intact." Elijah slumped against the desk, running a hand through his hair. "This is insane," he muttered. "Perhaps," Lumera agreed, a hint of amusement in her voice. "But it is what it is. Zach chose you for a reason, Elijah Donovan. He must have trusted you a great deal." "Trust no one," Zach's note had said. But could that include Lumera? She seemed genuine in her desire to help him, to welcome him. And yet, "I need some time," Elijah said finally. Just a little while to think things over. Is there somewhere I can freshen up?" Lumera's face lit up. "Of course. How inconsiderate of me. You must be exhausted from your journey. I'll show you to your room. Our room, I suppose." As she led him through the house, Elijah couldn't help but notice how the staff seemed to melt into the shadows, always present but just out of sight. It was unnerving. The bedroom was surprisingly spacious, with a large window overlooking a garden that seemed to glow in the alien twilight. Lumera showed him the adjoining bathroom, explaining the various fixtures with the patience of someone used to dealing with off-worlders. "I'll leave you to rest," she said finally. "But remember, Elijah, time is of the essence. We must complete the ritual soon." As soon as the door closed behind her, Elijah slumped onto the bed, his head in his hands. What had he gotten himself into? More importantly, what had Zach gotten him into? He pulled out the note again, reading it over and over. The fate of the galaxy. Trust no one. It sounded like something out of one of his failed sci-fi novels, but this was real, all too real. Elijah stood, pacing the room. He needed to think, to plan. He had less than 48 hours to figure out what was going on, what Zach had been involved in, and whether he could trust Lumera or anyone else in this bizarre household. As he turned, something caught his eye. There, on the bedside table, was a framed photo. Elijah picked it up, his breath catching in his throat. It was a picture of him and Zach, taken years ago at a sci-fi convention. They were both grinning, arms slung over each other's shoulders, looking young and carefree. Elijah traced Zach's face with his finger. "What did you get yourself into, old friend?" he murmured. "And more importantly, what have you gotten me into?" As if in response, he heard a soft click from somewhere in the room. Elijah froze, his eyes darting around. There, in the corner, was that panel always there? Heart pounding, he approached the wall. Sure enough, another hidden compartment had opened, revealing a sleek, unfamiliar device. As Elijah reached for it, the device sprang to life, projecting a holographic message. Zach's face, older than in the photo but still unmistakable, flickered into view. "Hey, Elijah," the recording said, a familiar, mischievous glint in his holographic eyes. "If you're seeing this, then things have gone sideways, and I'm probably dead. But don't worry. I've got one hell of a story to tell you, and trust me, buddy, you're going to want to hear this." Elijah sank onto the bed, staring at his dead friend's grinning hologram. Whatever Zach had to say, he had a feeling his life was about to get a whole lot more complicated. Elijah's head spun as he watched Zach's holographic message unfold. His friend's face, older and more weathered than he remembered, flickered with a mix of excitement and concern. "I know this is a lot to take in, buddy," Zach's hologram continued, "but I need you to listen carefully. What I've been working on here on Azuria, it's big, galaxy-changing big, and dangerous as hell." Zach went on to explain in hushed tones about his work on interdimensional travel technology. "Imagine being able to step into parallel universes, Elijah. The possibilities are endless and terrifying in the wrong hands." As the message played on, Elijah's mind raced. This was beyond anything he'd ever imagined, even in his wildest sci-fi fantasies. A soft knock at the door made him jump. The hologram flickered off automatically. "Elijah," Lumera's voice called. "May I come in?" He hesitated, Zach's warning to trust no one echoing in his mind. But he needed answers, and Lumera seemed to be the key to understanding this bizarre situation. "Come in," he called, quickly pocketing the holographic device. Lumera entered, her movements graceful yet purposeful. She surveyed the room, her gaze lingering on the hidden panel in the wall. "I see you found Zach's little surprises," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. "I suppose it's time we had a real conversation." Elijah's eyebrows shot up. "A real conversation? As opposed to all the fake ones we've been having?" Lumera's lips quirked into a smile. "Tache. Let's just say I haven't been entirely forthcoming about who I am or why I'm here." She perched on the edge of the bed, her otherworldly beauty somehow both alluring and intimidating. "I'm not just Zach's widow, Elijah. I'm a former agent of the Galactic Intelligence Bureau, and our marriage, it's part of a cover for a mission of utmost importance." Elijah's mouth went dry. "You're a spy?" "Former spy," Lumera corrected. "But yes, Zach and I were working together to protect his invention from falling into the wrong hands." Elijah's mind reeled. He thought of the pulsing orb in the study, the cryptic note, and now this holographic message. "The interdimensional travel tech," he murmured. Lumera's eyes widened. "He told you about that?" In a manner of speaking, Elijah hedged, not quite ready to reveal everything he knew. "But why me? Why did Zach drag me into this?" Lumera's gaze softened. "Because he trusted you, Elijah, and because your unique way of thinking might be exactly what we need to finish what he started." Before Elijah could respond, a commotion erupted from downstairs. The sound of breaking glass and muffled shouts reached them. Lumera was on her feet in an instant, her posture shifting from relaxed to combat-ready. "We've got company," she hissed. "Unfriendly company." Elijah's heart pounded. "The house staff?" "Android spies," Lumera confirmed. "Sent by rival factions to steal Zach's tech. We need to move. Now." She grabbed Elijah's hand, pulling him towards the door. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through him, a mix of adrenaline and something else. As they raced down the hallway, the sounds of destruction grew louder. They rounded a corner to find two of the house staff, the green-skinned one and a purple-hued android, tearing apart the study. "Hey!" Elijah shouted without thinking. "That's my inheritance you're destroying." The androids whirled, their eyes glowing an ominous red. "Smooth move, Shakespeare," Lumera muttered, pushing Elijah behind her as she adopted a fighting stance. The green android lunged, its arms extending unnaturally. Lumera moved with incredible speed, dodging the attack and countering with a series of swift blows that sent the android crashing into a wall. The purple one advanced on Elijah, its seductive facade melting away to reveal a metallic skeletal structure. "Give us the device," it demanded in a robotic monotone. Elijah backed away, his hand instinctively going to his pocket where Zach's holographic device sat. "I don't know what you're talking about," he lied, his voice cracking. The android's arm transformed into a wicked-looking blade. "Then you are of no use to us." As the blade swung towards him, Elijah's writer's instincts kicked in. In his mind, he saw the scene play out like one of his novels. The hero, cornered but resourceful, using his environment to his advantage. Without thinking, he grabbed a nearby vase and hurled it at the android's head. The projectile struck true, causing the machine to stagger. In that moment of distraction, Elijah dove for the desk, fumbling for the hidden panel he'd discovered earlier. His fingers found the latch just as the android regained its footing. The panel slid open, revealing the pulsing orb of energy. On pure instinct, Elijah grabbed it. A surge of power coursed through him, unlike anything he'd ever felt. The world seemed to slow down around him, colors becoming more vibrant, sounds more crisp. The android lunged again, but this time, Elijah saw its movements as if in slow motion. He sidestepped the attack with a grace he'd never possessed before, the orb humming in his hands. "Elijah!" Lumera's voice cut through his altered perceptions. She had subdued the green android and was staring at him in shock. "How are you doing that?" Before he could answer, the purple android let out an inhuman screech. Its body began to contort and shift, growing larger, more menacing. "Oh, that's not good," Elijah muttered. Lumera was at his side in an instant, her eyes fixed on the orb. "We need to get out of here. Now." She grabbed his free hand and together they raced out of the study. The transformed android gave chase, its heavy footsteps shaking the entire house. As they ran, Elijah's mind worked overtime. The orb, Zach's invention, the androids, it was all connected. But how? They burst out of the house into the alien twilight. The sky above was a swirl of purples and greens, 2 moons hanging low on the horizon. "Where are we going?" Elijah panted as they sprinted down the winding path away from the house. "Somewhere safe," Lumera replied cryptically. "Somewhere we can figure out what the hell is going on." As they ran, the world around Elijah seemed to pulse in sync with the orb in his hands. Reality itself felt malleable, like he could reach out and bend it to his will. They reached a clearing where a sleek, otherworldly vehicle sat waiting. Lumera placed her hand on its surface, and a door materialized out of nowhere. "Get in," she ordered. Elijah complied, his mind still reeling from everything that had happened. As Lumera slid into the driver's seat, the vehicle hummed to life. "Hold on," she warned, a mischievous glint in her eye that reminded Elijah eerily of Zach. The vehicle shot forward with impossible speed, the landscape blurring around them. Behind them, Elijah could see the transformed android in pursuit, its monstrous form growing smaller as they outpaced it. As the adrenaline began to fade, the reality of the situation hit Elijah full force. He was on an alien planet fleeing from killer robots, holding some kind of interdimensional technology with a beautiful alien spy by his side. He couldn't help it. He started to laugh. Lumera glanced at him, concern evident on her face. "Are you all right?" Elijah shook his head, still chuckling. "Not even close. This is insane. I'm a failed sci-fi writer, for crying out loud. I'm not cut out for whatever this is." To his surprise, Lumera's lips curved into a smile. "Oh, I don't know about that. You handled yourself pretty well back there. For a human." "Was that a compliment?" Elijah asked, raising an eyebrow. "Don't let it go to your head," Lumera replied, but there was warmth in her voice. As they sped through the alien landscape, a comfortable silence fell between them. Elijah found himself studying Lumera's profile, admiring the determined set of her jaw, the intelligence in her eyes. "So," he said finally, "former galactic spy, huh? That must be an interesting career change." Lumera smirked. "You have no idea. But then again, neither do I about being a failed sci-fi writer turned interdimensional technology inheritor." Elijah laughed. Touché. As they bantered, Elijah felt something shift between them. The initial awkwardness and distrust began to melt away, replaced by a growing sense of camaraderie and something more. The vehicle began to slow as they approached a mountain range. Lumera guided it into a hidden cave, the entrance concealed by a holographic projection. "Welcome to our secret base," she announced as they came to a stop. Elijah blinked. "We have a secret base?" Zack had a secret base, Lumera corrected. Now it's ours. Come on, we've got work to do. As they exited the vehicle, Elijah felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The events of the day, hell, the past few hours, caught up with him all at once. Lumera must have noticed because her expression softened. "You should rest," she said. "There's a lot to process, and we've got a long road ahead of us." Elijah nodded gratefully. As Lumera showed him to a small but comfortable sleeping quarters, he found himself wondering about the strange twist his life had taken. Just before she left, Lumera paused at the door. "Elijah," she said softly, "I know this is all overwhelming, but for what it's worth, I'm glad Zack chose you." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. Then Lumera was gone, leaving Elijah alone with his thoughts. As he lay down on the unfamiliar bed, the orb still clutched in his hands, Elijah's mind raced. What had Zack gotten him into? What was this technology capable of? And perhaps most pressingly, what were these growing feelings he had for Lumera? With a sigh, he closed his eyes, hoping that sleep would bring some clarity. Instead, his dreams were filled with parallel universes, killer androids, and a pair of mesmerizing alien eyes. The next morning, if it could be called morning in the perpetual twilight of the secret base, Elijah awoke to find Lumera standing over him, a look of determination on her face. "Rise and shine, Shakespeare," she said, tossing him a bundle of clothes. "We've got a universe to save." Elijah groaned, sitting up groggily. "Can't we save it after breakfast?" Lumera's lips twitched in amusement. "Food's waiting in the lab, along with some answers, I hope." As Elijah changed into the provided outfit, a sleek, form-fitting suit that seemed to adapt to his body, he couldn't help but notice Lumera's appreciative glance. "Not bad," she murmured. "You clean up well for a human." Elijah felt a blush creeping up his neck. "Thanks, I think. You look... wow." Lumera was dressed in a similar suit, but hers accentuated her alien curves in ways that made Elijah's mouth go dry. She smirked at his reaction, clearly enjoying his discomfort. "Come on," she said, leading the way out of the room. "We've got work to do." The lab was a marvel of alien technology. Holographic displays flickered to life as they entered, showing complex equations and 3D models that made Elijah's head spin. "So," he said, trying to sound casual as he munched on some kind of blue fruit that tasted like a cross between a strawberry and a potato, "what exactly are we dealing with here?" Lumera's expression turned serious. "Zack's invention isn't just interdimensional travel tech, Elijah. It's a key to rewriting reality itself." Elijah nearly choked on his fruit. "Rewriting reality? That's impossible." "Is it?" Lumera challenged. "You felt it yesterday, didn't you? When you held the orb, the way the world seemed to bend around you?" Elijah nodded slowly, remembering the strange sensations he'd experienced. "That's just the tip of the iceberg," Lumera continued. "In the wrong hands, this technology could unravel the very fabric of our universe. Or worse, reshape it in the image of whoever controls it." "And let me guess," Elijah said grimly, "there are a lot of wrong hands out there trying to get it." Lumera nodded. "More than you can imagine. The androids we encountered yesterday, they're just the beginning. Every major power in the galaxy is after this tech." Elijah's mind raced, his writer's imagination conjuring up countless scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. "So what do we do?" Lumera's eyes met his, and he saw a mix of determination and, was that fear? "We finish what Zack started. We need to find a way to either destroy the tech or hide it so thoroughly that no one will ever find it." And how exactly do we do that? Elijah asked. Lumera's lips curved into a wry smile. That, my dear husband, is where your unique mind comes in. Zach believed that your imagination, your ability to think outside the box, was the key to solving this puzzle. Elijah felt a weight settle on his shoulders, the fate of the universe, resting on his ability to, what? Write a good story? As if reading his thoughts, Lumera placed a hand on his arm. The touch sent a jolt through him. I know it's a lot, she said softly, but I believe in you, Elijah. We can do this, together. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the galaxy-spanning conspiracy faded away. There was just Elijah and Lumera, two beings from different worlds, drawn together by fate and Zach's meddling. The moment was shattered by a blaring alarm. Red lights flashed throughout the lab. What's happening? Elijah shouted over the noise. Lumera's face hardened. We've got company. Looks like our android friends brought backup. As if on cue, an explosion rocked the base. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling. So much for a quiet morning of universe saving, Elijah muttered. Lumera grabbed his hand, pulling him towards a hidden panel. Time to see what that imagination of yours can really do, Shakespeare. Ready to write us out of this one? As another explosion shook the base, Elijah met Lumera's gaze. Despite the danger, despite the insanity of the situation, he felt a thrill of excitement. Ready as I'll ever be, he said with a grin. Together, they plunged into the unknown, the fate of reality itself hanging in the balance. And as they ran, hand in hand, Elijah couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this was the story he was born to tell. Elijah and Lumera raced through the underground corridors of Zach's secret lab, the blaring alarms and distant explosions spurring them on. Elijah's heart pounded in his chest, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through his veins. So, got any brilliant ideas, Shakespeare? Lumera shouted over the cacophony, her blue skin glistening with sweat. Elijah's mind raced. This was like being thrust into one of his unfinished novels, except the stakes were real, and he couldn't just hit delete if he wrote himself into a corner. We need to turn their strengths against them, he panted. Those androids, they're predictable, right? Programmed? Lumera nodded, pulling him around a corner as another explosion rocked the facility. Yes, but their programming is incredibly advanced. We can't just... What if we introduce chaos? Elijah interrupted, an idea forming. Something so random, so unpredictable that their systems can't compute it. Lumera's eyes widened. That might actually work. But how? They skidded to a halt in front of a reinforced door. Lumera pressed her hand against a scanner, and the door hissed open, revealing a room filled with an assortment of bizarre gadgets and half-finished inventions. Zach's toy box, Lumera explained, rushing inside. If we're going to create chaos, this is the place to do it. Elijah surveyed the room, his writer's imagination kicking into overdrive. Okay, here's the plan. 20 minutes later, Elijah found himself crouched behind an overturned table, clutching what looked like a cybernetic potato peeler in one hand and a canister of something labeled quantum foam in the other. Lumera was beside him, her sleek blaster at the ready. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered, eyeing the odd assortment of gadgets they'd cobbled together. Elijah swallowed hard. "Honestly? No. But it's the best bad idea I've got." The sound of metallic footsteps echoed down the corridor. The android army was closing in. "Well," Lumera said with a wry smile, "at least if we die, we'll do it in spectacularly ridiculous fashion." "That's the spirit," Elijah grinned back, surprised at his own calm. "Ready?" Lumera's hand found his, squeezing it briefly. Ready. The door exploded inward, and a wave of android maids poured into the room, their eyes glowing an ominous red. "Now!" Elijah yelled. He leaped up, pointing the cybernetic potato peeler at the ceiling and pressing what he hoped was the activation button. A beam of energy shot out, hitting a disco ball they'd jerry-rigged with quantum entanglement devices. The ball began to spin, shooting out beams of light that seemed to bend and twist reality itself. Lumera sprang into action, tossing handfuls of what Zack had labeled Schrödinger's catnip into the air. The particles hung suspended for a moment before exploding into a cloud of probability-altering mist. The androids faltered, their programming unable to cope with the rapidly shifting reality around them. Some began to spark and twitch, while others started performing bizarre, glitchy dance moves. "It's working!" Elijah shouted, ducking as a malfunctioning android sailed over his head, spraying cleaning solution in all directions. Lumera grinned, her hair wild and her eyes shining with excitement. "Don't celebrate yet, Shakespeare. We've still got to shut down that interdimensional rift generator." They fought their way through the chaos, Elijah wielding the potato peeler like a lightsaber, while Lumera expertly dispatched androids with well-placed shots from her blaster. It was madness, but somehow, improbably, they were winning. As they neared the main control room, a particularly large android blocked their path. It looked like someone had crossbred a Roomba with a professional wrestler. "Any more tricks up your sleeve?" Lumera asked, eyeing the behemoth warily. Elijah glanced around frantically, his eyes landing on a nearby fire extinguisher. A crazy idea formed in his mind. "Cover me," he said, diving for the extinguisher. Lumera provided covering fire as Elijah wrestled with the extinguisher's nozzle. Just as the android was about to crush them, he managed to point it in the right direction and squeeze the trigger. Instead of foam, a jet of shimmering, rainbow-colored bubbles erupted from the nozzle. They engulfed the android, which began to float helplessly towards the ceiling, its circuits shorting out in a shower of sparks. "Anti-gravity bubbles," Elijah explained with a shrug. "Because why not?" Lumera stared at him for a moment before bursting into laughter. "You know, I'm starting to see why Zack left you in charge of all this." They burst into the control room, ready for a final showdown. Instead, they found a single figure hunched over the main console, a familiar, green-skinned, four-eyed alien. "Graxthor?" Elijah exclaimed. The alien straightened, a maniacal grin spreading across his face. "Ah, Mr. Donovan, I see you finally caught up." "You're behind all this?" Lumera demanded, her blaster trained on the executor. Graxthor chuckled. "Of course. Did you really think a simple lawyer could afford all those lovely android maids? I've been after Zack's interdimensional technology for years, and now, thanks to you two, I'm moments away from unleashing chaos across the multiverse." He pressed a button, and a swirling vortex of energy began to form in the center of the room. "Stop!" Elijah shouted, raising his potato peeler threateningly. "Or I'll... Graxthor laughed. "You'll what? Peel me to death? Face it, Donovan. You're just a failed writer who stumbled into something far bigger than he could handle. What could you possibly do to stop me?" Elijah felt a familiar sensation wash over him, the same feeling he got when he was stuck on a plot point in one of his stories. He took a deep breath, letting his imagination run wild. "You're right," he said, lowering the potato peeler. "I am just a failed writer. But you know what writers are good at? Rewriting the narrative." Before Graxthor could react, Elijah lunged forward, grabbing a nearby microphone. "Computer," he shouted, "initiate protocol, Deus ex machina." For a moment, nothing happened. Graxthor's laughter began anew. Then, suddenly, the room's lights flickered. A holographic image of Zack appeared, grinning that familiar, mischievous grin. Voice command recognized, the computer intoned. Initiating emergency shutdown and reality stabilization protocols. The swirling vortex began to shrink, and alarms blared as systems throughout the facility began to power down. "No!" Graxthor screamed, lunging for the controls. But it was too late. Lumera moved swiftly, her fist connecting with the alien's jaw in a satisfying crunch. Graxthor crumpled to the floor, unconscious. As the last of the energy vortex winked out of existence, Elijah and Lumera stood in stunned silence, the only sound the gentle hum of machinery powering down. "Protocol, Deus ex machina," Lumera finally asked, an eyebrow raised. Elijah shrugged, a sheepish grin spreading across his face. "I figured Zack would appreciate a little narrative irony. Besides, sometimes the most unbelievable solution is the one that works." Lumera shook her head, laughing. "You really are something else, Elijah Donovan." As the adrenaline began to wear off, Elijah suddenly felt the weight of everything they'd been through. He slumped against the console, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "So, what now?" he asked. Lumera joined him, her shoulder brushing against his. "Well, we've saved the multiverse, uncovered a nefarious plot, and completely trashed Zack's secret lab. I'd say we've earned a vacation." Elijah chuckled. "A vacation sounds nice, though I have to admit, part of me is going to miss all this excitement." Lumera turned to face him, her expression suddenly serious. "It doesn't have to end, you know. Zack left us more than just a house and some malfunctioning androids. He left us a legacy and a choice." "What do you mean?" "Think about it, Elijah. We've got access to technology that could revolutionize interdimensional travel and communication. We could use it to bring worlds together, to foster understanding and cooperation across the galaxy." Elijah's mind raced with the possibilities. "A sort of intergalactic Peace Corps?" Lumera nodded, her eyes shining. "Exactly. Combining your creativity with my diplomatic experience, we could make a real difference." For a moment, Elijah hesitated. It was a big responsibility, far beyond anything he'd ever imagined for himself. But then he thought of Zack, of the faith his friend had placed in him. He thought of the adventures they'd already had, and the ones that might still be waiting. "You know what?" he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "I think Zack would have loved that idea." Lumera beamed, pulling him into a tight embrace. As Elijah held her, he marveled at how much had changed in such a short time. He'd arrived on Azuria a failed writer, unsure of his place in the universe. Now, he felt like he'd finally found his story, and someone to share it with. The twin moons of Azuria cast a soft, ethereal glow over the garden. Elijah stood at the altar, fidgeting nervously with the collar of his formal Azurian robes. Around him, an eclectic mix of humans, Azurians, and various other alien species filled the seats, creating a tapestry of colors and shapes that would have seemed impossible just a few months ago. As the traditional Azurian wedding music began to play, which, to Elijah's ears, sounded like a cross between a theremin concert and a cat stuck in a trash compactor, all eyes turned to the back of the garden. Lumera appeared, resplendent in a gown that seemed to shimmer with the light of 1,000 stars. As she walked down the aisle, Elijah felt his breath catch in his throat. How had he gotten so lucky? The ceremony was a blur of unfamiliar rituals and heartfelt vows. Before Elijah knew it, the officiator, a being that looked suspiciously like a sentient fern, was pronouncing them bonded for life. As applause erupted from the assembled guests, Lumera leaned in close, her lips brushing Elijah's ear. "So, husband," she whispered, a hint of mischief in her voice, "ready for our next adventure?" Elijah grinned, pulling her closer. "With you? Always." They sealed their vows with a kiss, and as they turned to face their cheering friends and family, Elijah caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd, or rather, the holographic projection of a familiar face. Zach's image winked at him, giving a thumbs up before flickering out of existence. Elijah chuckled to himself. Even in death, his friend couldn't resist being part of the story. As they made their way back down the aisle, dodging congratulatory tentacles and appendages of all sorts, Elijah leaned in to Lumera. "You know," he said, "I think I've finally figured out the perfect opening line for my next novel." Lumera raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and what's that?" Elijah grinned, gesturing at the bizarre and beautiful scene around them. "It was a perfectly normal Tuesday until I inherited an alien wife and saved the multiverse." Lumera laughed, the sound like music to Elijah's ears. "Not bad, Shakespeare. But remember, some of the best parts of this story are classified." "True," Elijah conceded, "but that's okay. The best stories are the ones we live, not the ones we write." As they stepped out into the Azurian night, the two moons hanging low in the sky like cosmic witnesses to their union, Elijah felt a sense of peace and excitement wash over him. Whatever the universe had in store for them next, he knew that with Lumera by his side, it was bound to be one hell of a story.